Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for coming. Steve, next time I want to go before him, not after him, because I'm not going to be rooting out any corruption. I'm not going to be going after any people buried in the landfill. I'm seeking to get elected for Senate District 36, which covers all of Narragansett and half of North Kingstown. It's sometimes referred to as the Shoreline District of the State Senate. So I'm really here tonight. I know many of you are from this immediate area, and I'm really here to let you know that, number one, there are candidates out there who need your help. I'm certainly one of them. And I need to know who you know in Narragansett and North Kingstown that's ready for the change that Eric just talked about, that we're all here talking about. And Rod, if you steal any of my ideas tonight, I'm going to come after you. We have a member of the House of Representatives right here in the audience. And there are a lot of things that I know from the years that I've been campaigning. Can you believe it? I've actually campaigned for close to, I think it's 8 years, Mark? 6 years? Somewhere in that neighborhood. First time I got into the race, it was as a primary against a fellow Republican. He chose not to run again, and I saw that as basically kind of my on-the-job training. I went again 2 years later. I'm going up against, and then I ran again 2 years again. From this election that just passed, I increased my share of the vote by 6%, which for a non-democratic candidate in this state is a huge increase. Sounds like a little number, and it is a little number, because it didn't put me in the State House and it didn't provide opposition to the people who were there. But there are a lot of issues that we're all facing, a lot of issues that I've heard out on the campaign trail. I'm actively involved with the business community in North Kingstown and make it a comparable effort in Narragansett. I live in North Kingstown, and for a district that covers 20,000 people, is about 20 miles long, and each election I stock up on shoes to make sure that I'm not wearing through to my socks, and getting out and meeting as many voters as possible, and that's where I need your help. Some of the things that I'm thinking about, number one, I'd like to see us do away with the Senate. Why does the state, this side, need two political bodies? Nebraska can do it, other states are doing it, do we really need it? What have they done for us? Where's the money going? Well, that's it. So, you know, that's a thought that's out there. It's a long way away. We're a very traditional culture, so the idea of doing something like that, the first thing that's going to come up is, well, what are we going to do with the empty side of the State House? I haven't come up with an idea for that yet, but I'm working on it. There you go. Give it to the Greyhound race. So, there's a lot of things that we're looking at. There are a lot of things that we need to take care of. There's a lot of talk about consolidation. I've got a couple of ideas on that, and I'd like to hear some questions from you on what you think about that. We saw what happened with Nick Gorham in presenting some of those ideas, and we need to find a new way to do that. And why do we want to do it? Well, the idea is that we will do better with the dollars that we have, and we need to take a serious look at that. There are ways that we can do it, I think, that would be on a little bit more local scale, so that we're not losing some of the things that we do hold near and dear about Rhode Island. So there's a lot that we need to talk about. I don't know how I'm doing on time, but I'm going to turn it over to the next candidate, and I thank you very much. Any way that you can put my name out in those communities, you know somebody that you think would be interested in helping, I'd love to hear from you. Thank you very much. I basically have to agree with what's been said so far. It's pretty much pat answer that we've got to look at where we are spending our money. And I think that's really something that the legislature continues to avoid doing year after year, budget cycle after budget cycle. We knew every time that they go into a budget that there's going to be a deficit. A few months ago, Carol Mumford, former rep from Scituate, said, right now we're looking at $300 million, is what Projo is saying. When you really look at all the smoke and mirrors, it's probably closer to over $1 billion. Because it's just things that continually get swept under the rug that people aren't willing to take a look at. And as has been said here, we really need to take a look at how we're doing things, what is important. As was said a little earlier, we can't even maintain our roads. Well, where's the money going? So we really need to take a very serious look at where is the money being spent, how is it being spent, and what can we do to economize. The governor recently, and I'll give the governor a lot of credit, a lot of the things that we're talking about now is because of a lot of the efforts that Governor Kachiri has pushed, very unpopular, very frequently, but has made a lot of people look at what are we looking at, what are we doing, and what are we doing with the tax dollars that just, where do they go? Why are we driving over potholes? Why are we replacing our bridges in half the expected lifespan? The money is going somewhere, and it's not right. So there's a lot that needs to be taken into consideration in looking at that. I think we really need to look at the tax plan, tax policy report that came out at the end or middle of last year and see where are we essentially holding on to traditions and expectations of our tax system that may not be valid any longer. And I think that may be a big help for a lot of the monies that we need to find, but also, as both of these gentlemen said, smaller government and less corruption is really going to help us a lot. Congratulations on your efforts. You know, we need people that get involved, and it's the little things. Now, number one, the pieces that you're talking about, I absolutely positively support the Constitution. It really is the prescription for how to be successful, and we continue to try to ignore it or allow our elected leaders to ignore the Constitution. We need to stop that. What you're talking about is a federal issue, but certainly at the state level, I would support it. Jim Sheehan is a teacher, and I have the highest regard for teacher. I spent my afternoon yesterday at Charahoe Voc Tech talking to 10th and 11th graders about the hospitality and tourism industry. It is critical to Rhode Island, but those kids are critical to our future. In fact, they're critical to get us out of debt. So if we're not preparing them properly, what's going to happen? And I think one of the things that we need to do is to make sure we are supporting our education system to the max. Jim Sheehan is a teacher, and he takes off in June. He will be my opponent. He's been my opponent for the last two and a half elections. And from July through Labor Day, when he goes back to school, he is supported by your tax dollars to go out and campaign. I have a business I have to run. And if I'm not there, if I'm not selling, what happens if we're not selling? We ain't getting paid. And my mortgage company expects to get paid. So this gentleman, Mr. Sheehan, voted for Senate 713. You all familiar with that piece of legislation? It extended contracts. It extended an existing school contract. If at the end of its term, let's say it's due for negotiation this July, if the board, the school committee, and the unions do not agree, that piece of that contract continues on through the future. Now, it was not passed. It's still sitting out there in limbo, but he felt that that was in the best interest of all of us. Who of you here who works for yourself has a contract extended if your customer doesn't want to continue to negotiate with you? Mine don't. So why should they? And those are one of the things that are driving up our costs and need to be stopped. Definitely. I mean, there's no reason, by all indications, and I haven't looked at it that closely to know all of the background that's going on here, but there's really no reason to be funding it. And again, it's just another arm of big government. And I'd have to agree with our libertarian friend here that what we're seeing time and time again is that the government just doesn't get it right, which is unusual because they're made up of people like you and me. But for some reason, as a friend said to me when I told him I was going to run, he says, Bill, I know a lot of good people up there, but it's got to be something in the water. So, you know, it's just so. Certainly, we need to hold back any funding on a lot of, essentially, ACORN is not that far off from legislative grants. They're giving us our own money back. Well, let us keep it. And we'll decide whether or not to spend it on things that we see are most beneficial for our own community.